March 16, 1944. Cologne, Germany. The rail yard stretches 3 kilometers along the Rhine, a maze of steel rails and wooden platforms shrouded in pre-dawn fog. Ernst Keller stands on platform 7, pocket watch open in his palm, studying the second hand as it sweeps past the 4:53 in the morning. 7 minutes until the scheduled departure of military transport, 824 destination, Nancy, France, 400 kilometers to the west, where the 3rd Panzer Division is assembling for operations against anticipated Allied advances. The train sits motionless behind him. 46 freight cars carrying everything a mechanized division requires to wage war. Ammunition pallets stacked 4 meters high. Fuel drums labeled with hazard markings. Spare tank tracks bundled like massive steel necklaces. Crates of artillery shells, medical supplies, food rations, replacement engines for vehicles that haven't broken down yet but will. The manifest lists 843 tons of material valued at 17 million Reichsmarks, enough supplies to sustain 4,000 men and 200 armored vehicles for 3 weeks of combat operations. Ernst has conducted this train across Germany and occupied territories 61 times in the past 2 years. He knows every junction, every signal light, every water stop between here and the French border. He knows the exact minute when morning sun strikes the cathedral spires in Koblenz. He knows which bridges vibrate at certain speeds. He knows the names of signal operators at 23 control towers along the route. This is his railway. He has moved trains across it for 32 years, first as a fireman, then as an engineer, finally as a senior conductor responsible for coordinating entire transport schedules across the Western Reich. The Germans trust him completely. Ernst Keller, reliable, precise, a railway professional who understands that modern warfare runs on logistics and logistics run on timetables. The Deutsche Reichsbahn, German National Railway, has placed him in charge of coordinating military transports through the Cologne hub because he has never missed a schedule, never filed an incorrect report, never given authorities reason to question his loyalty. What the Germans don't know, what they cannot possibly suspect, as Ernst closes his pocket watch and signals the engineer to build steam pressure, is that Ernst has spent the last 9 months constructing an invisible weapon, not a bomb or a derailment or crude track sabotage, something far more sophisticated. He has created ghost schedules, phantom train movements that exist only on paper, documented in official reports but never actually occurring. He has learned to manipulate the vast bureaucratic machinery of German military logistics so precisely that he can make trains disappear into administrative confusion while their cargo sits motionless in rail yards, going nowhere. Tonight's transport is different. Tonight Ernst isn't just creating delays. He is about to trap an entire Panzer division in a logistical nightmare so complex that German commanders will spend weeks trying to understand what happened while their supplies rotate through an endless loop of railway stations. Always scheduled, never arriving. The locomotive whistle sounds twice. Steam vents from pressure valves. Ernst climbs aboard the conductor's car, settles into his small office with its desk and filing cabinets and telegraph key. He opens his conductor's log, dips his pen in ink, and writes the first entry. March 16, 1944. 0500 hours. Transport 824 departing Cologne on schedule. Destination Nancy via Koblenz, Trier, Metz. Estimated arrival March 17th. 1400 hours. Every word is a lie. The train will not reach Nancy. It will not follow the listed route. By tomorrow afternoon, it will be sitting in a rail yard 400 kilometers from where German logistics officers expect it, and those officers will have documentation proving the train arrived exactly where it was supposed to be. Ernst has spent his entire adult life understanding railways. The mechanical systems, yes, but more importantly, the administrative systems. The paperwork that tracks every train, every car, every ton of cargo moving across thousands of kilometers of track. In the chaos of total war, with hundreds of trains moving daily, that paperwork has become more important than the trains themselves. Cargo only exists where paperwork says it exists. The Germans have built the most sophisticated logistics tracking system in military history. Every military transport has a movement order listing origin, destination, route, schedule. Every junction has a control tower that records train passages with precise timestamps. Every freight car has an identification number tracked through central registries in Berlin. The system is designed to be foolproof, to prevent exactly the kind of chaos that characterized logistics in the First World War, when trains simply vanished into the vastness of the front. But Ernst has discovered that sophisticated systems have sophisticated failure modes, and the most catastrophic failure mode occurs when the paperwork splits from reality so smoothly that nobody notices the divergence until it's far too late to correct. Transport 824 rolls out of Cologne at 0502 hours, 4 minutes late by Ernst standards but within acceptable tolerances. The locomotive pulls the long string of freight cars through the switching yard, past darkened warehouses, past the burned-out sections where Allied bombers struck 3 weeks ago. The route heads southwest, following the Rhine Valley toward Koblenz. In the conductor's car, Ernst begins his work. He has 3 different sets of paperwork laid out on his desk. The official movement order, provided by Military Logistics Command in Frankfurt. A blank conductor's log where he will document the actual train movements. And a second, falsified conductor's log that will document phantom movements. The technique requires absolute precision. Every junction, every control tower, every checkpoint must receive the correct paperwork at the correct time. The actual train will follow one route. The documented train will follow another. By the time anyone notices the discrepancy, the cargo will be trapped in what Ernst thinks of as a logistics loop, perpetually in transit, perpetually about to arrive, never actually reaching its destination. Ernst didn't invent this technique overnight. It evolved from small experiments starting in May 1943, when he first realized how dependent German logistics had become on paperwork rather than direct observation. The railways were simply too vast, too complex. Officers in Berlin couldn't watch every train. They relied on reports, on timestamps filed by control tower operators, on manifests signed by conductors. His first attempt was crude. He deliberately misrouted a train carrying non-critical supplies, then filed paperwork indicating it had reached its destination on schedule. The train sat in a rail yard for 6 days before anyone noticed. Ernst was called to explain the discrepancy. He blamed a clerical error, forged signatures from control tower operators who supposedly documented the train's passage. The Germans accepted the explanation. Wartime chaos. Mistakes happen. Be more careful. Ernst learned. The Germans would believe paperwork over reality if the paperwork was convincing enough. He began studying the logistics system, identifying its weak points. Control tower operators who rubber-stamped reports without actually watching for trains. Logistics officers overwhelmed with hundreds of movement orders daily who couldn't verify every transport. Central registries in Berlin that compiled reports mechanically, trusting the data from field personnel. Over 9 months, Ernst created 27 ghost movements, trains that officially arrived at destinations while actually sitting elsewhere, supplies that existed in multiple locations according to different reports, transport schedules that showed trains departing before they actually arrived. Each incident was small enough to seem like administrative confusion. Nobody suspected deliberate sabotage because the pattern was invisible. But March 16, 1944, is different. The 3rd Panzer Division represents one of Germany's most capable armored formations. 12,000 men, 240 tanks and assault guns, full artillery support. They're being assembled at Nancy to form a mobile reserve against the expected Allied invasion of France. Intelligence reports suggest the invasion will come soon, possibly within weeks. The 3rd Panzer Division needs to be at full strength, fully supplied, ready to respond within hours. Transport 824 carries critical supplies for this division. Without it, the division cannot operate at full effectiveness. But Ernst's plan goes beyond simply making this train disappear. He's going to make it exist in so many contradictory locations simultaneously that German Logistics Command will waste weeks trying to sort out the confusion, while the actual cargo sits untouched in a rail yard, useless. At 0631 hours, Transport 824 reaches Koblenz, 78 kilometers south of Cologne. The junction here is critical, where routes diverge toward France, toward Luxembourg, toward southern Germany. Ernst's official route requires turning west toward Trier. Instead, he instructs the engineer to continue south toward Mainz. The control tower operator in Koblenz records the train's passage westbound toward Trier. Ernst provides him with a falsified conductor's log showing this routing. The operator stamps the document, files it with his daily reports. As far as official records show, Transport 824 is heading toward Trier on schedule. The actual train continues south. At 0740 hours, it reaches Mainz, 112 kilometers from Cologne. Here, Ernst performs a magic trick with paperwork. He files arrival documentation showing the train came from Mannheim to the south, not Koblenz to the north. The main station master accepts this without question. Hundreds of trains pass through daily. He has no reason to verify origins. He stamps Ernst's paperwork and files it. Now Transport 824 exists in 2 places simultaneously, according to official records. The Koblenz control tower documented it heading west. The main station documented it arriving from the south. Both sets of paperwork will be forwarded to Regional Logistics Command in Frankfurt. Clerks there will attempt to reconcile the contradiction. They will likely assume clerical error, request clarification, and in the meantime mark the transport status as uncertain. Ernst continues. At 0915 hours, the train reaches Frankfurt. This is the riskiest moment. Frankfurt is a major logistics hub with sophisticated tracking systems, but it's also chaos. Allied bombing has destroyed much of the rail infrastructure. Trains are being rerouted constantly. Schedules change hourly. The administrative staff is overwhelmed. Ernst presents movement orders showing Transport 824 is actually Transport 827, a different train carrying different cargo to a different destination. The paperwork is perfect. He has spent weeks forging the necessary stamps and signatures. The Frankfurt logistics officer barely glances at it before approving passage. Now the train has 3 identities. Transport 824 heading west from Koblenz according to one set of records. Transport 824 arriving at Mainz from the south according to another set. Transport 827 passing through Frankfurt according to a third set. The cargo physically exists on one train, but administratively it exists in 3 contradictory locations. Ernst's ultimate destination is Würzburg, 120 kilometers southeast of Frankfurt. It's far from any active front, far from where the 3rd Panzer Division expects its supplies. But Würzburg has extensive rail yards for storing overflow freight. Trains often sit there for days waiting for available transport routes. One more train among hundreds won't attract attention. At 1300 hours, Transport 824, still officially known by that designation to its crew but documented under multiple identities, arrives at Würzburg. Ernst parks it in a storage yard, files arrival paperwork under yet another falsified transport number, and sends a telegram to Cologne confirming the train has been properly delivered and is awaiting further routing instructions. Meanwhile, he sends a second telegram to Nancy, destination of the original supplies, confirming that Transport 824 departed Frankfurt on schedule and will arrive as planned tomorrow afternoon. This telegram is routed through the Frankfurt logistics office, where clerks automatically forward it without verification. By evening on March 16th, the administrative situation is perfectly chaotic. Cologne believes transport 824 successfully departed and is en route to Nancy. Nancy expects transport 824 to arrive tomorrow with critical supplies. Koblenz has records showing the train heading west. Mainz has records showing it arriving from the south. Frankfurt has records of a completely different transport, and the actual train sits in Würzburg under a fourth identity, officially waiting for routing instructions that will never come. The cargo exists physically in one location, but administratively in 5 contradictory locations. German Logistics Command will spend weeks trying to resolve this discrepancy. They will send inspectors to check rail yards. They will telegraph control towers demanding explanations. They will file reports with Berlin. Eventually, someone will physically locate the train in Würzburg and attempt to redirect it. But by then, Ernst will have created a dozen more ghost schedules. More trains trapped in logistics loops. More supplies perpetually in transit but never arriving. The cumulative effect will be strategic-level disruption of German logistics in the West, precisely when the Allies are preparing their invasion. Understanding Ernst Keller's background requires understanding the culture of German railway operations, a tradition of precision and professionalism stretching back to the 1830s when Germany began building its rail network. Railways weren't just transportation infrastructure, they were instruments of national power, enabling rapid military mobilization, industrial development, cultural integration across dozens of German states. Ernst was born December 3, 1899, in Essen, industrial heart of the Ruhr Valley. His father worked at the Krupp steelworks. His mother died when Ernst was 6 years old. His father remarried a woman whose brother was a railway engineer, and that uncle became the most important influence in Ernst's life. Uncle Hermann took young Ernst to the rail yards, showed him locomotives, explained how steam pressure translated into mechanical motion, how signals coordinated train movements, how the entire system functioned as a vast, coordinated machine. Ernst was fascinated. He abandoned plans to follow his father into the steel mills and instead apprenticed with the railway at age 14. The year was 1913. Germany's railways were at their peak, the most advanced in the world. Ernst learned track maintenance, signal operation, locomotive firing. He studied railway engineering at night school, learned the mathematics of grades and curves and braking distances. By 1918, age 19, he was qualified as a locomotive fireman. Then came the First World War's end and Germany's collapse. The railways, which had functioned so precisely during the war, moving millions of soldiers to the fronts, now struggled with defeat. Rolling stock was surrendered to the Allies as reparations. Experienced railway workers left for other employment as the economy collapsed. The system that had been Germany's pride became a symbol of national humiliation. Ernst stayed. Through the chaos of the Weimar Republic, through hyperinflation, when his wages became worthless overnight, through political violence that saw street battles in German cities, Ernst showed up at the rail yard and did his work. By 1930, he was a qualified locomotive engineer. By 1935, as Germany rearmed under the Nazis, he was promoted to senior conductor, responsible for coordinating complex freight movements. Ernst was never political. He didn't join the Nazi Party, though pressure to do so was intense. He simply stated that his loyalty was to the railway, to professional standards, to the tradition of German engineering excellence. Somehow this was enough. The Nazis needed skilled railway workers more than they needed party members. Ernst was too valuable to purge. When war came in September 1939, Ernst was 40 years old, too old for military conscription. He was classified as essential civilian infrastructure and assigned to military transport coordination. Over the next 4 years, he moved trains across the expanding Reich, into Poland, into France, supporting the invasion of the Soviet Union with endless supply trains rolling east. He saw the system's scale grow impossibly vast, tens of thousands of trains moving across occupied Europe, and he saw the system's vulnerability. The Germans believed their logistics were invincible because they had always functioned precisely. But that precision depended on trust, on railway professionals like Ernst accurately reporting train movements, on control tower operators honestly documenting passages, on clerks in Berlin faithfully compiling data. The system had no redundancy against deliberate falsification by trusted insiders. Ernst's motivation for sabotage wasn't ideological. He didn't oppose the Nazi regime for political reasons. His opposition was personal and absolute. In November 1942, his nephew, Uncle Herman's grandson, a 22-year-old railway signalman named Peter, was arrested by the Gestapo for listening to BBC radio broadcasts. Peter was sentenced to 3 years in a labor camp. He died there in March 1943 from typhus and malnutrition. Uncle Herman, who had first shown Ernst the magic of railways, died 2 weeks later. The doctors called it heart failure. Ernst knew it was grief. The regime had killed both of them, slowly, administratively, through the same brutal efficiency that made the trains run on time. Ernst decided that if the railways were instruments of Nazi power, he would turn them into instruments of Nazi defeat. But he wouldn't do it through crude sabotage. He would do it through precision, through exploiting his expert knowledge of the system, through turning German administrative efficiency against itself. By March 17, 1944, the day after Transport 824's disappearance, the contradictions begin manifesting in German Logistics Command. A clerk in Frankfurt notices that records show Transport 824 passing through Koblenz westbound, but also arriving in Mainz from the south, an impossibility. He files an inquiry with both locations requesting clarification. The Koblenz control tower responds with copies of their stamped documentation showing the train heading toward Trier. The main station responds with their documentation showing arrival from Mannheim. Both sets of paperwork appear authentic, properly stamped, correctly formatted. The Frankfurt clerk escalates the issue to his supervisor, Hauptmann Franz Weber, a logistics officer responsible for tracking military transports through the region. Weber has been in this position for 8 months. He handles an average of 250 transport discrepancies per month, mostly minor issues like delayed arrivals or rerouted trains. But this case is different. The same train apparently took 2 different routes simultaneously. Weber telegraphs Nancy, asking if Transport 824 has arrived. Nancy responds negative, but they received confirmation yesterday that the train departed Frankfurt on schedule and should arrive imminently. Weber checks Frankfurt records. No documentation exists of Transport 824 passing through, only Transport 827, which was carrying entirely different cargo to a different destination. Weber sends inspectors to check rail yards. He orders control towers along the route to physically verify if Transport 824 passed through, not just check their paperwork. The inspectors find nothing. The train has vanished. By March 19th, 3 days after the train's departure from Cologne, Weber files a formal report with Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, Armed Forces High Command, in Berlin. Military Transport 824, carrying critical supplies for 3rd Panzer Division, is missing. Last confirmed location Cologne on March 16th. Multiple contradictory reports of subsequent location. Request immediate investigation. The report reaches the desk of General Major Rudolf Goerke, Chief of Wehrmacht Transportation. Goerke has larger problems. Allied bombing has destroyed major rail hubs across Western Germany. The entire logistics system is under strain. Supplies are delayed constantly. A single missing train is unfortunate but not critical. Gerke assigns the investigation to a subordinate officer with instructions to locate the train and determine what happened. The investigation will take weeks. During those weeks, the 3rd Panzer Division will remain undersupplied, unable to conduct extended operations, exactly as Ernst intended. But Ernst isn't finished. While German investigators search for Transport 824, Ernst is creating more ghost schedules. On March 18th, he conducts military transport 831 from Cologne towards Stuttgart, officially. Actually, the train goes to Nuremberg. Different destination, falsified documentation, another cargo lost in administrative confusion. On March 20th, Transport 837 officially travels from Frankfurt to Munich. Actually, it goes to Augsburg, with paperwork showing it arrived from somewhere else entirely. More contradictions, more investigations, more logistics, officers wasting time trying to reconcile impossible documentation. Ernst develops a rhythm. Every 3rd or 4th transport, he falsifies documentation. Not enough to create an obvious pattern, enough to generate continuous administrative chaos. Trains sit in wrong locations, supplies don't arrive when expected, cargo manifests don't match physical inventories. The entire logistics system begins showing stress. The genius of Ernst's technique is its compound effect. Each ghost schedule creates contradictions that require investigation. Investigations require personnel, telegraph communications, physical inspections. These activities consume resources that would otherwise go to actual logistics operations. The system slows down, not from physical damage but from administrative confusion. By early April 1944, German logistics in the West are approaching crisis. Supplies are arriving an average of 4 days late. Multiple transports are unaccounted for. Cargo is accumulating in wrong locations. Field commanders are complaining that their requisitions aren't being filled. And nobody can identify the root cause because the pattern is invisible. Some officers blame Allied bombing. Others blame incompetent railway workers. A few suspect sabotage. But investigations focus on physical infrastructure, looking for damaged track or destroyed bridges, not falsified paperwork. The idea that a trusted railway conductor could manipulate the entire system through documentation fraud simply doesn't occur to anyone. Ernst understands he can't continue indefinitely. Eventually, someone will notice the pattern, will realize the same conductor is involved in multiple discrepancies, will investigate him specifically. He estimates he has perhaps 3 more months before exposure. He intends to use those months to create maximum disruption. The tactical implications of Ernst's sabotage extend far beyond simple supply delays. In modern mechanized warfare, logistics determine operational capability. An armored division without fuel cannot maneuver. Without ammunition, it cannot fight. Without spare parts, its vehicles break down and become immobile. The 3rd Panzer Division, missing the supplies from Transport 824, faces exactly these constraints. By late March 1944, the division's commander, General Lieutenant Hans von Funk, is reporting to Army Group West that his unit is at 68% operational readiness. 57 of his 240 tanks are non-operational due to maintenance issues. He's rationing ammunition for training exercises. His supply officers cannot explain why requisitioned materials haven't arrived. Von Funk's division is supposed to be a mobile reserve, ready to respond rapidly to Allied threats. At 68% readiness, it's immobile, capable only of defensive operations. This is exactly what Ernst's sabotage is designed to achieve. Not dramatic explosions, not destroyed infrastructure, just steady erosion of German military capability through logistical strangulation. The Allies are unaware of Ernst's activities. British intelligence monitors German railway traffic through signals, intercepts, and aerial reconnaissance. But they're looking for broad patterns like troop movements or supply concentrations, not individual transport discrepancies. Ernst's Sabotage is too subtle to appear in Allied intelligence assessments. Ernst himself doesn't know if anyone outside the railway system is even aware of his work. He has no contact with resistance groups, no communication with Allied intelligence. He works alone, using only his expertise and access. This isolation is both his greatest security and his greatest vulnerability. Nobody can betray him, because nobody knows what he's doing. But if he's caught, nobody will know to continue his work. On April 6, 1944, he's conducting a routine transport from Cologne to Mannheim when a passenger boards at Frankfurt, a Wehrmacht logistics officer named Major Klaus Richter. Richter requests access to the conductor's car, explaining that he's investigating transport discrepancies and wants to observe railway operations firsthand. Ernst maintains his composure, but internally he's calculating. If Richter is here investigating, if he's specifically chosen Ernst's train, then suspicion exists. Ernst needs to determine how much Richter knows and whether exposure is imminent. Richter settles into the small conductor's office, watching Ernst work. They talk casually at first. Richter explains that he's been assigned to investigate why so many transports are experiencing problems. Nothing specific about ghost schedules, just general concerns about system reliability. Ernst probes carefully. What kind of problems is Richter investigating? Delays mostly, Richter says. Trains not arriving when scheduled. Cargo being misplaced. The usual wartime chaos, but more frequent than normal. Has anyone identified causes? Some blame Allied bombing. Some blame poor maintenance. Richter's own theory is that the system is simply overloaded, trying to move too much material through damaged infrastructure. Ernst relaxes slightly. Richter doesn't suspect deliberate sabotage. He's looking for systemic problems, not individual malfeasance. Ernst can work with this. He spends the next hour explaining railway operations to Richter, demonstrating how complex the coordination is, how many potential failure points exist. He emphasizes the difficulty of maintaining precision under wartime conditions. Richter seems convinced. By the time they reach Mannheim, he's thanking Ernst for the educational experience and commenting that it's remarkable the railway system functions as well as it does given the circumstances. Ernst files this interaction away as valuable intelligence. German Logistics Command doesn't suspect sabotage. They think the problem is systemic overload. This gives Ernst more time to continue his work. But the encounter also makes clear that he's running out of time. Investigations are intensifying. More officers are being assigned to logistics problems. Eventually, someone will look closely enough to see the pattern, to notice that certain conductors are associated with disproportionate numbers of discrepancies. Ernst decides to accelerate his operations. Instead of falsifying every third or fourth transport, he begins targeting specific, high-value cargo. On April 9th, he creates a ghost schedule for a transport carrying tank engines. On April 13th, another ghost schedule for artillery shells. On April 17th, a third for radio equipment. Each operation removes critical supplies from German logistics pipelines. The supplies still exist physically, sitting in various rail yards, but administratively they've vanished into contradictory paperwork. German logistics officers waste days searching for them, trying to reconcile documentation, attempting to redirect cargo that can't be located. By late April 1944, the cumulative impact is severe. Army Group West reports that average supply delivery times have increased from 4 days to 11 days. Multiple divisions report being below 80% operational readiness due to missing supplies. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, overall commander in the West, sends increasingly urgent messages to Berlin demanding that logistics problems be resolved immediately. The Allies invade Normandy on June 6, 1944. The 3rd Panzer Division, which should have been at full strength and ready for immediate counterattack, is still at 72% operational readiness. It takes 3 days to move into position, 3 critical days when Allied forces are most vulnerable. The delay contributes to the Allies successfully establishing their beachhead. Ernst doesn't know his work influenced D-Day. He doesn't know if his ghost schedules saved Allied lives. He only knows that he continued creating administrative chaos for as long as possible. In early May, he falsifies documentation for 2 more transports. In mid-May, 3 more. Each operation becomes riskier as investigations intensify. On May 23, 1944, Ernst is finally caught, not through investigative brilliance, but through random chance. A logistics clerk in Stuttgart notices that his signature appears on documentation for Transport 872, showing the train passed through Stuttgart on May 20th, but Ernst's own daily schedule shows he was conducting a completely different train from Cologne to Frankfurt that day. The clerk files an inquiry. The discrepancy triggers investigation. Gestapo agents arrest Ernst on May 25th at his apartment in Cologne. They find nothing incriminating there, no forged documents, no sabotage equipment. Ernst has been careful to never keep evidence, but they interrogate him intensively, comparing his conductor logs against control tower records, finding contradictions, demanding explanations. Ernst admits nothing. He claims clerical errors, confusion during chaotic operations, mistakes made under pressure. The Gestapo doesn't believe him. They have documented 63 transport discrepancies associated with Ernst over 14 months. The pattern is too consistent to be accidental. They torture him for 3 days, demanding names of accomplices, resistance contacts, Allied intelligence connections. Ernst truthfully tells them he worked alone, that he has no contacts. The Gestapo interprets this as defiance. They torture him more severely. On May 29th, Ernst dies from his injuries. He's 44 years old. The Gestapo files a report concluding that Ernst Keller was a saboteur responsible for significant logistics disruptions, but apparently operated independently. They recommend enhanced screening of railway personnel and increased oversight of transport documentation. These recommendations are partially implemented, but by June 1944, the German position in the West is collapsing. Logistics problems become irrelevant compared to tactical defeats. After the war, nobody remembers Ernst Keller. His sabotage was too subtle, too administrative. There are no dramatic explosions to commemorate, no destroyed bridges, no visible scars, just paperwork, falsified documents that were destroyed or lost in the chaos of Germany's defeat. The trains he diverted eventually reached their destinations or were captured by advancing Allied forces. The supplies existed. They simply arrived too late to matter. But in the critical months before D-Day, Ernst's ghost schedules removed hundreds of tons of supplies from German logistics pipelines. They created administrative chaos that delayed deliveries by days or weeks. They forced German logistics officers to waste time investigating contradictions instead of moving supplies. The cumulative effect was measurable degradation of German military capability in the West precisely when it mattered most. Modern military historians studying German logistics in 1944 note unusual patterns in transport reliability starting in March and intensifying through May. Supplies that should have reached frontline units didn't arrive. Documentation shows trains departing on schedule but not reaching destinations. The standard explanation is that Allied bombing disrupted railways, but bombing intensity doesn't correlate with logistics disruptions. Something else was happening. Something the Germans never fully understood. That something was one railway conductor with 32 years of experience, a dead nephew, and an intimate understanding of how sophisticated administrative systems fail. Ernst Keller didn't derail trains or blow up bridges. He manipulated paperwork, created contradictions, turned German bureaucratic precision into a weapon against itself. His technique was invisible, his impact was strategic, and his sacrifice was absolute. The trains kept running. The schedules existed. The supplies were perpetually in transit. And a Panzer division sat immobile in France, waiting for cargo that would never arrive, trapped in the ghost schedules of a conductor who understood that sometimes the most effective sabotage is making everything look perfectly normal while nothing actually works.